Yeah, it's great. And like kind of what we chatted and you know what I've mentioned to the rest of you too is like, I mean, the 9 day process is, you know, it's not too long, it's not too intensive, it's designed in a way that's gentle enough that I feel anyone can do. But you know, also just the simple process of going in rotation, you know, with your own flows. That could be um you know, 1 day on fruits and vegetables and whatever you're eating, and then 1 day on juices, and then you go back and then you kind of oscillate between that for a little while. Sometimes that's a more graceful um, approach for some people, you know. And the thing with when we're dealing with like healing in any sort, whether it's healing physical elements, mental, emotional, you know, more energetic, or um, you know, our connection to source in some form, kind of clearing things out so that that can be seen more clearly. Um, it's uh it's not a race, and it's also going to happen inevitably if like you're doing any aspect of any of these, you know, stages. Like if we look at the pyramid that I've outlined, or the spiral that we created in the previous group, where you know you're looking at a less is more and progressively less is more consumption rate. You're basically just looking at like speeds of efficiency in terms of healing. Like dry fasting will be the ultimate, you know, healer, because yeah, well, there's it's just you and God at that point, right? You and pure love. So nothing being consumed, the body's forced to go into a healing process and elimination process. But if you're in a more denser form of consumption, even if it's just like, say, you know, some salads, or you know, a bit of fruits and that kind of thing, you're still going to go through healing. It's just going to be a bit slower depending on the process, right? But it's so intricate, because sometimes, you know, if we're focusing on healing some emotional element, sometimes faster is not better. I mean, a lot of times faster is not better, right? Because you could kind of whiplash yourself in different ways. So it's a really sensitive, it's a very sensitive process that we have to be aware of when we're dealing with more physical things. Like if, because what we talked about last time is like downstepping of frequency, right? So if you're, when we're dealing with cosmic structure or our anatomy structure, if we're dealing with more of a causal level or energetic level, and we're coming into like, you know, mental, emotional, physical, each level is kind of giving you almost like red flags in terms of, okay, there's something up here. So if we're, the more sensitive we are, the more we're able to catch things before they manifest as, you know, inevitably physical ailments, which is most disease, right, or illness. We're able to catch things because we're more sensitive and we're aware of those behavior traits or those habits and how that will like manifest. So um, if we've let something come into physical form, let is a loose term, obviously, but you know, if something is manifested as a physical ailment, then we do have to approach it at the physical level as well. Like we can, we're never inevitably going to approach it at the mental, emotional, energetic simultaneously, but it does also have to be addressed physically. And so that's where these principles very much come into play. And why, you know, if we're in some sort of like, you know, stage 2, stage 3 type cancer, or something that's, you know, really taken fold in our body, that's where we don't really have so much room to breathe in terms of speed efficiency. It would actually be very helpful for us to go quite intensive into like a liquid cleanse, or you know, using various other tools, because yeah, you're kind of in a dire state, right? So it's important. But if you're not so much in that much of a dire state, at least physically, you have a bit more room to breathe, and that's where we also can then address, you know, emotional stuff with more sensitivity. And it very much does require sensitivity, right? If we're too extreme in our practices, we're not really actually addressing the emotional element. A lot of times we're just running from practice to practice, and it's going to be doing work, but it kind of almost defeats the purpose a little bit too. So you know, so yeah, that's an important point. Um, yeah, okay, cool. Well, maybe we'll do a brief meditation then, just to sink in, and then if there's any other questions, I just really wanted to check in with everyone for people who are starting or whatever. We weren't going to do like a full session today. Um, and yeah, I got a couple things going on myself that I have to address today. So we'll start with a brief meditation. We'll see where it goes. Okay, so we can get comfy and however we like. And close the eyes and just bring the attention here. And we just come to rest in what's here and what's remaining as everything kind of naturally comes to a rest. The mind, the sensations, the feeling sense can all kind of slow down. We can naturally bring the attention to the breath and just observe what's already naturally moving. Very subtle inhale and exhale through the nose, and just as natural rhythms of movement that we can sense and just simply observe and be with. And that attention can kind of naturally expand, almost like you're expanding it through the bubble of your anatomy, starting with just the physical anatomy, but it could extend outside of you as well, with no real limit to that bubble. So you can expand that attention as far as sensation can take it. You may just start with physical sensation where you can hear the sounds around you, or subtle sensations of, I don't know, the wind, or any smells, or subtle light coming in through the eyelids. But just expanding that sensory capacity 360 degrees every direction. And we'll simultaneously stay with the breath. And we can even control the breath a little bit, maybe 5 to 8 seconds on the inhale through the nose, and the same and slowly on the exhale through the nose. And so expanding that breath from just simply coming in through the nose and the lungs, but expanding that firstly just within the body, as if the breath is moving in through the skin, like the whole body is a bit translucent. Every cell is inhaling on its own. There's billions and trillions of cells that make up this body, each of them breathing on their own very naturally, where you're feeling that oscillation, very subtle contraction and then an opening expansion. So you can feel that breath almost like it's moving through the spaciousness of the skin and the spaciousness between every cell in the body. So the whole body that may feel quite dense and sometimes stiff or stagnant or blocked, we actually feel into the spaciousness within the entirety of the body, within every cell, around every cell. So it's as if the wind could like blow right through you almost. And here we're consciously controlling that breath and that energy, where we feel that interconnectedness with not only our body, but also the sensations all around us that we've initially connected with here. So the trillions of cells and particles that make up even the air around you, or the trees, or the physical inanimate objects around you. It's as if everything is breathing on its own and together. And sometimes when we're expanding this attention, this breath, 360 degrees every direction, we sometimes can feel certain areas that are like blind spots or blocks. It's as if our attention can't even go there, or it's blank. Sometimes we can't even feel it or see it. And this is to be investigated not only through the breath and the movement and the expansion of that energy into those areas, but just naturally with the attention, where that attention is essentially uncovering or investigating the entirety of what we can perceive around us and within us and through us. So feeling the spaciousness within everything, this interconnectivity, it's like a interconnectivity of grace or pure love. That's what fills the spaciousness. And we can feel that within our own heart as we empty out and we use the breath to clear. And at a certain point, just releasing the breath and realizing just our attention itself can naturally clear anything and everything. Because all energy that is essentially something that we view to be cleared, like a block or a stagnant energy, it's really energy that is not being seen or acknowledged. So, this is where that investigative perception can move through every crevice of the body, every crevice of our perceptual view, and can come to see and be with everything. And this is naturally how these energies or any energy can continue to move and essentially go on its way. Everything's in constant motion, constant change, but yet we can feel this rested peace that does not change. It's like a mountain, it's unchanging, and that is within and through everything, like this spaciousness. So anything that holds any particular weight or density, as we investigate it, we see it's actually quite spacious. And in fact, it's made up of this absolute um, emptiness, but there's a love that's also there simultaneously. So it is empty and full at the same time. So what can bloom here is also a gratitude and a felt frequency of appreciation within this piece. So we'll take this last few moments just to rest in the silence here. Naturally, some of us may feel complete here, which is all good. Others may feel called to kind of rest in this longer, which is also welcomed. If you do feel complete, we can just open the eyes, bring our attention here, just take your time. Very nice. If there's any shares or comments, questions on that practice, feel free to share if you'd like. It's very nice.
I love that meditation. It's like a soothing, refreshing ocean sunset breeze.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. It's good to hear. Yeah, we're
it's sort of like light and airy.
yeah. Yeah, that spaciousness. I feel you can really feel it too. The breath is a
Mm,
nice way to get there, but it's not required. But yeah, like yeah, I can feel it too. So I know what you mean. We're up here in a town called Wakefield, north of Ottawa. So it's kind of a foresty town. So we have the door open and you can hear the whole forest, all the sounds and stuff. And we've been making a lot of music actually to it too. And yeah, it's quite magical. You know, it's quite magical. Really sense everything.
nice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's good. Very good. Awesome. That's as much as we need for a detox, really, to be quite honest. If you
I
do
was
that,
just thinking, yeah, that was enough for me. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know that I need to do much more right now.
Yeah, that's it, right?
No, thank you. That was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very potent. Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Awesome. This is great. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing to be honest, even just doing these courses because I separate them from practical, for practical reasons. You know, like having a course on food and detox and all that. But you know, most of my work has been in meditation and non-dual spiritual teachings and these things, and some of the freedom teaching stuff too. And you know, I mean, this is the core, right? Like this is how we start and end a lot of the conversations in these groups because if we get too lost in the food and too lost in the mechanics of things, we lose sight of the power of these processes, and then it actually just enhances the potency of the mechanics or the detox or whatever. And you know, I for me on my path at least, meditation and self-inquiry and these practices were always the foundation. Well, not always, but as I came into them, they became so clearly the foundation. um and then what was a very close second was certainly fasting as well, because to me they're almost simultaneous in there's the same meaning, same potency, right? Like having nothing in the gut and nothing in the mind is quite, it's actually quite a similar experience, and both can enhance each other. So working with them in balanced ways, right? Not extreme, just walking the middle path, but they do very much intertwine. So it's kind of funny sometimes, yeah, when we do these courses and then we're doing these practices, and it's like, well, okay, well, I've connected to the source of love already. Then I don't even, it doesn't even matter what I'm eating or this or that or whatever. Right? Almost, it's kind of funny. Um, and but that has to be cultivated too, right? Because now, you know, I did a 10-day dry fast in January, and then afterwards I got really exploratory again with foods, more so than I had been in almost 8 years, I'd say. You know, eating a bit of, you know, really high quality pizza here and there, or you know, even having some sushi and things like this. And although my body feels naturally much better in a more compassionate fruitarian way, engaging in some of these meals when it felt really aligned, and you know, I feel such a flow with my day, or there's such a connection to whatever's happening. It's just as divine, right? Because when we feel into this spaciousness that we've connected to, and we understand that, oh yeah, all the density or any thought or feeling or situation or relationship that holds this density, it's actually this love. It's this empty love as well, empty but full in love, right? And we can feel that spaciousness and that lightness with any topic, any situation, any dynamic. Um, and even just sharing personally with myself, I just heard of um yeah, I still feel it a little bit too myself, but I had a good friend who passed on within the past day. And um I can still feel this spaciousness and this natural peace within it all, even though I feel the emotions of it, right, and the shock of it, and because it was very unexpected, and just the appreciation, the joy. So it's like you feel the sadness and the guilt and all the emotions. What could I have done? How could I have been a better friend or a better companion? Or how could I have maybe helped the situation? Maybe I could have helped avoid, all these things come to mind. But it's just all these emotions at the same time as that love and that peace and that joyfulness that's still present and does not change. That's the beauty of true abiding realization, right? That even amongst a situation like this, which is quite strong, we can still feel that same joy, right? That same gratitude, and that's what better way to support in intense situations, like with people around us or the situation as a whole, or just support our own bodies, right? Because our sometimes our bodies have a reaction to something that our soul is not tainted by, but our body is certainly feeling, right? So how could we be of better service than to be that peace and that abiding joy, even amongst, you know, the intensity of the challenge or whatever the circumstances, right? Um, so yeah, I didn't plan actually to share that today, but it's come out. So that's where we're at, and that's partially why the session's a bit shorter today, because I got to go attend to some things with that. But yeah, it's an important point, right? Because we can feel this all the time, and the more that we focus upon it and we cultivate it and we surrender into it and just be it, it does lock in. It does lock in like a mountain, like a knowing that's unshakable. Because a knowing is unshakable, right? Like you have hands, you don't believe you have hands. So if anyone comes and tells you don't have hands, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters in terms of that. You know it to be true. So when we know this whatever this is that we're pointing to, this love, this joyfulness, this abiding peace, ourselves, when we know ourselves, then it doesn't change. It will not change, and no matter the circumstances. um and so yeah, that's hopefully that's helpful in some way. Yeah, I don't know if there's any questions or other shares or topics that want to be addressed, but we can get into whatever. Whatever is helpful. I did want to address the one question that Robert put in the group around shadow work and fasting. So maybe just from my talk and just this meditation, you can already see how fasting can be a means to engage shadow work. And actually, the comments by Debbie and Annie were really good. I didn't add anything because nothing needed to be added almost. They really outlined what I view it to be too. When we if you don't if you've never not eaten for 24 hours, and then you don't eat for 24 hours, and all of a sudden all these emotions are coming out and you're kind of up in arms about the fact that you can't have any food. I mean, that's quite a revealing thing about the shadow, what you may have not seen for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? um so just that in itself, like just addressing our habits. Fasting can be in any form. We could fast from relationships, from talking, from sex, from food, from entertainment, from thinking, from doing, working. You can fast from pretty much everything. Fasting is just like not doing it for some time, it's so simple, right? So when we don't do something that we may habitually do or compulsively do or addictively do, then naturally it's going to reveal very quickly an unconscious aspect of, what is typically termed the shadow. um, and and that unconscious compulsive attitude or energy um, will naturally come to the surface, and generally it's a bit painful, right? Because it's like the moment we're not engaging in compulsive action, we instantly start to feel withdrawal, right? So we'll start to feel a bit of withdrawal. um, and this can go for anything. Like, you take a day off, like, I don't know, maybe going on your phone, you'll start to feel a bit of maybe anxious withdrawal or something, right? um, it could pretty much relate to anything. So it's a very interesting thing to engage that feeling sense of withdrawal, like to really investigate it as it arises in the body. And we went into this actually more in the level 2 course. Like for practical senses, I did separate things, but it's all intertwined. But the level 2 video series, which some of you may go on to do as well, it really addressed more of the emotional capacity, the emotional elements, and the shadow work. And because shadow work in the traditional scene of our, like, kind of this ecosystem of healing and all that has a certain definition, right? Which is typically viewed as the unconscious aspects of self, which are generally causing some form of suffering. So we have to address that, and by going into it. And then there's another form of definition to it within the freedom teaching Kalonic science definition, which is a lineage that I've been very devoted to over the years. And that system focuses on a very specific aspect of our energy body that is called the shadow, or the shadow body. And that shadow body is essentially an aspect of our self that exists within a parallel universe, and it's a fallen parallel universe. And that fallen parallel universe is very intertwined with this time matrix or universe we exist in, which is also partially fallen. And it is why we actually experience a lot of the distorted aspects in our world and in our life. Suffering and darkness and evil and a lot of the atrocities we see on this planet is actually not necessarily normal within other places in eternal co-creation. Even just the basic idea that when we look up in the sky, we see mainly darkness and a few, and many stars, but it's mainly dark at night in the night sky. In an eternal world or an eternal universe, if you're on a particular planet or star, you would not see that. Actually, you would look up and you would see celestial skies and colors and worlds, endless worlds, like you would see in a fantasy movie. So we live in a very specific universe with very different dynamics here. And so there is a very specific aspect of approaching the shadow body that is quite scientific and mechanical, because it's a distortion that we carry in these bodies now. And that's why we get influenced in very unconscious ways to do things that sometimes we don't even know why we've done certain things, in our life. So, even without getting into those teachings, a lot of us end up addressing this anyways, because inevitably we come to face it through, embodiment work and, the stuff we're doing here, and just addressing, like bringing ourselves into an audit of righteous, what is a righteous or unrighteous in behavior. Just that in itself can be very helpful, right? To address our morals and our ethics and our actions. Are these things lining up with true righteous behavior, right? So that can be done in different ways. So we'll get into that maybe a different day, but so yeah, fasting, and any form of fasting, any form of some form of renouncing, right, is going to be helpful. It's not a forever thing. We don't need to renounce things forever. We need to find a balance. But sometimes, yeah, it's very helpful to renounce or to let go, to approach things in a less is more way, so that we can really see where our compulsive nature is, where our unconscious shadow self manifests and takes over on some level, right? So I hope that answers that, Robert, at least initially. But there's many aspects to what we're doing. But this initial meditation we've been doing, just like most of the styles that I teach, which are very similar, around the lens of self-inquiry, vipassana, or like kind of a surgical energy healing, is really just a piercing investigation. Piercing investigation is simply addressing feeling senses in the body that have a particular sensation or charge, and going right into them and investigating them and feeling every crevice of that feeling, right? So it's both a very piercing, like almost a masculine form of piercing focus and concentration, as much as it is also a deep expansion of love and abidance and compassion, right? Like you're hugging and caressing yourself, and you're feeling into all those feelings, and you're not running from any of them, while still having that piercing focus to continue to investigate every sensation to see if it's really what it appears to be, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, without that spaciousness, you kind of go on into automatic behavior most of the times without, you can't even go into the piercing because it just takes over so quickly, the unconscious. And in my experience, you do need to have a sense of spatience and a capacity to hold it in the moment, to be able to actually pierce through it. Otherwise, you're just lost already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to take care of our individual bodies first and foremost, because, you know, as we progress on the path, like many of us already have likely come into consciously or unconsciously, is that as we actually heal the physical body, the individual body, you know, the nervous system is soothed, emotions, that kind of thing, we start to see and reveal that a lot of the investigation also is within topics or energies that are not even necessarily to do with us always individually. Sometimes we're feeling into collective topics, you know, topics of the earth as a whole. We feel the earth herself, you know, or the collective humanity, or, you know, we see things going on in the news, and that may not be as of an individual topic, but it reveals things within ourselves that if our bodies are not kind of, you know, rested in a particular way, we may take that on very personally, you know, these worldly topics, and then it becomes like so overwhelming to deal with. But when we are in a balanced body, then we can investigate these topics that are still equally as painful, but in a way that's of far more service, because we can find our balance, you know, within the center point of a family, community, collective that may be not feeling so much in balance, right? So our level of responsibility and service starts to elevate, you know, to new capacities, right? In terms of what our responsibilities here are, you know, in our service of healing and these things. I mean, all is self, it's all a part of ourselves on many levels, but on the most fundamental human level, at least our third dimensional level, we can see that sometimes we're clearing topics that are, you know, much bigger than ourselves, right? Which I think we actually tend to find that everything that we're healing is much bigger than ourselves. So, you know, it's all a part of a whole that you know, everyone is dealing with on some level, right? But sometimes when we're contracted in a dysregulated nervous system, toxic body, emotional, you know, like overloads of emotional capacity, then it becomes very individual, very personal, right? And it seems very personal, and that can be very overwhelming, right? So yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I don't know if there's any other questions. I'm liking the group. I like the posts. Thanks, Leonor, for sharing, and Debbie and everyone. Everyone's great. It's just good to have the conversations going. Things take care of themselves, I find. I don't always have to answer
I have a
everything.
quick question.
Sure.
I was going to wait till next week, but thought I should ask just in case. So I've been having some sensations, some uncomfortable sensations around my second and third chakra. So, you know, as the gut is emptying out, it's just been more and more intense each day.
Mm.
To the point where it's like borderline pain. Like I'm trying not to judge it too much, but it's, you know, definitely uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can tell it's part of all this process. Anything to share with that?
Sure. Well, it goes back to essentially what we started with today and what I just mentioned about the investigation, really developing that ability of concentration and investigative inquiry into directly those sensations. So what I mean by this specifically, if it's not clear, is identifying exactly where that sensation is in the body and piercingly focusing your attention into that region so that you can begin to feel all the little crevices of sensations, right? So it's like, so say I feel like a pain in my hand. If I just observe it from like the typical kind of like mind's analysis, oh, I'm feeling a pain in my hand, it hurts, oh, this is uncomfortable, and then maybe trying to like avoid it and thinking about other things, but still feeling the throbbing. The difference would be when I investigate it, like focusing all my attention onto the charge of that general area, right, in the hand. When I really actually zone in, you start to see that it's actually a bunch of like thousands of millions of micro sensations, right, that make up this bigger sensation that says, oh, it's this element in the hand. But when we really zoom in, it's like, where does the boundary lie of where the sensation is and where there isn't? It's actually very hard to find because of the fact that when we keep zooming in, it's like a fractal, right? It's a fractal, it's a fractal, it's all these micro levels of sensation. So the more we continue to piercingly investigate, we start to find more layers, more subtle sensations. And as you're investigating, what's actually happening is you are seeing them, like when you see someone or you feel seen, if you immediately it's healing, right? Because you're met, you're matched, you're met exactly where you are. So this is what you're doing with those sensations. You're matching them, meeting them exactly where they are. And it's like, it's not like, oh, well, I did that for 20 minutes, it didn't work. It's like, no, like you're literally doing it endlessly. Like there's no limit to how much you can do this. This is essentially that like higher level of vipassana or self-inquiry and Advaita, right? Like it's exhausting this practice. Like it's relentless in the form of how intensive this work is required for any form of abiding realization, in terms of like, well, I can be with all of this and not be affected by it. That's like where we're all headed on some level, in the sense of any pain, any suffering that arises, we know we're not that. But until that's seen and known, we have to be willing to investigate every crevice of every painful sensation. So this doesn't necessarily make it go away, but and it's actually better that we're not holding that intention, like, oh, I want to go and make this better or fix it or change it or heal it or whatever. That actually can sometimes delay or distance you from real intimate, feeling, right? So so this is really it. Like it's just really focusing, and you don't need to like spend, like when I say like, okay, well, 20 minutes is enough, you need to do whatever. It's not like you got to sit there for hours on end. You can, you can go about your day and you can have times where you do this, but on some level, when we're engaging in the healing process, at some level, our whole life has to become this, because there's nothing more important than that. And not even there's nothing more important than that. It's just like the pain of your old self essentially falling away or dissolving is like unignorable. Like there's nothing else you could look at than these pains and suffering, because it's just there constantly, right? That's like the paradox of seeking, where people get into spiritual seeking, think it's like, oh, this is so fun, but then we realize like really the real advanced layers of this are the most painful things we could possibly imagine. And it's not that we need to like create pain for ourselves, but we're just addressing what's there. And in this case, when you are dealing with the release of the habit of consumption or food, and now you're getting a mix of different sensations. It's both physical, it's emotional, it's energetic, it's mental. So this is where the investigation is very important, because you'll be able to decipher what that is, and then go about things accordingly. Because sometimes the pains is just too much, so maybe then it's good to break the fast, right? But generally, when we focus on this process, you give yourself more time, right? Because a lot of times those pains will naturally just kind of dissolve, pass away, right? Within a day, half a day, whatever. And then you're good for a couple of days. And then the next wave sometimes will come up, right? So you got to give yourself a little bit of time to feel into things, and not like, and I wouldn't assume that for you, Robert, but sometimes people, like in the moment they start feeling pain, it's like, well, I'm going to break the fast. It's too much, right? our threshold will be different for each of us, and it's not really just to do with this fast. I mean, all of us have had to deal with this on our path already. You could be eating all the time and still have to face these emotional pains. Like there's, it's just that when you're fasting, sometimes it's a bit more pronounced. So yeah. Yep. Happy we addressed the investigative topic. Yeah, does that make sense, Robert?
It does.
Okay, nice. So yeah, I'm just going through the group, making sure I didn't miss any other questions. Yeah, well, good. Some really good topics today. Really practical. Similar pains, Debbie's saying. Yep. Yeah. I remember too, on a real like physical level, most of us are dealing with like parasites, worms, different critters living in the intestinal tract. So when you stop eating, they're going to be starving. So they're not going to like that, right? And you're going to get communication from them to your brain saying, what are you doing? You need to eat. You know what I mean? You need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat that, this and that. So that can be quite intensive on a mental level, on a physical level too, because you're going to feel things like potentially dying away, right? So yeah, like the other thing too is if you have certain layers of damage in the intestinal tract and the colon, the fruits, the juices will start to reveal that damage. So again, that's another place where pain can arise. So when I say like investigation, doing it, you're going to be able to address some of the other aspects, emotional, energetic components. But sometimes, like I said, that may not necessarily get away. That may not necessarily dissolve the physical pain per se, right? It will accelerate the healing process, but it may just not dissolve it right away because we have to develop the skill, right? So yeah, but I think we've all matured on some level to know like physical pain, we can deal with physical pain while still having a clear mind, right? You go do an exercise routine and you get the mind focused and clear. You can go through the exercise routine and feel the pain while still being able to move through it. So that's in a sense part of what sometimes is required as the physical body is going to be healing. Yeah. Debbie saying, I try to breathe deep into the area and fully fall into it with the exhales. Yeah, that's helpful too. Sometimes I drink a bit of clay with the psyllium. Yeah. Yeah, hunger pains is a real thing, right? Because if you have like a intestinal tract or gut that's kind of filled with a mucoid plaque, toxic buildup, acids, and parasites, yeah, when nothing's coming in, it's kind of like hunger pains are literally like all of that, like craving for more of it, more of itself. Like the toxic waste wants more of itself. The parasites want more like acid forming foods. It wants more of itself. So when it's not getting it, like the whole body's like revolting, right? And saying, no, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Because it's dying. It's like it's getting cleared out. Right. So pain in is pain out. Remember that, right? Pains you've caused by consumption that have come in, you have to face that pain on the way out. Just like anything, any emotional pain, any of that, right? It's like karmic whiplash. If you've caused pain to another, you'll face that pain back, right? So everything is equal in equal measure. So as long as we accept the reality of that, then it actually makes things a bit easier sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes us not postpone or delay, not,
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Just checking my phone here because I do have to like keep an eye on a couple things on a personal note. So yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah, cool. Alrighty. Well, yeah, I did intend to keep it somewhat short, so I don't know if there's anything else, but I do feel like we really hit some juicy subjects today. It's always juicy. It doesn't matter if it's a short session or whatever. It's always fun. So I always get surprised every session, really, to be honest. All right. Well, yeah, that sounds good. I think we'll end it there. Monday we'll do the next session. Most if people are on the juices, they'll be pretty deep into it at that point or finishing. And yeah, any other questions or comments, just put it in the Telegram or send me an email if it's personal. And yeah, enjoy your day. Cherish everyone in your life. That's one thing I've been shocked into this past day. You know, those people that, I don't know, procrastination on sending someone a message or just resolving something or addressing things, like just, I don't know, like I've always past many years I've lived by a quote as best I can. I mean, this situation kind of shocked me into maybe where I haven't been, but you know, it was a quote that said, anything that can be done today, don't leave till tomorrow. And, you know, we have to be practical in that, but it really is always stuck with me, you know, things that, I don't know, like a simple chore that I could do today that, you know, it could be done today, but it doesn't need to be left till tomorrow. Why don't I just do it, you know? And maybe in relation to relationships, like a message that you want to send to somebody, maybe it's not the right time, but maybe you're just procrastinating on it. Maybe you're just overthinking it. Maybe you just need to send a nice message to somebody or check in on someone, or I don't know. But sometimes it's like maybe just a day, right? Like maybe a day could change everything. So yeah, just cherish everyone and everything in your life. It's a good message to myself. Yeah. Okay. Well, I love you all. Hope you have a great day, great night,
Thank you.
and yeah, we'll see each other on the interwebs and then next Monday. Okay. See you.